So, hello and welcome everyone to this next session of the European Microfinance Week 2021. In this session, we will speak about how to mainstream inclusive finance for climate adaptation, for climate change adaptation and biodiversity conversation. I will not do that alone. My name is Hannes. I'm co-founder of Yappa Solutions, but I have a great panel here to actually discuss these topics and share light, share insights about some recent initiatives in the sector. And to quickly introduce my panel, I'm very, very happy to welcome Marta Moneo, actually from Panama. Good morning, Marta. She's Program Officer of Climate Change Adaptation at UNEP. There is also Luca. He's co-founder and co-CEO of gawa. He's joining us from Madrid. And there's Anais from CD. She's social and environmental performance analyst there. So great to have you all on board. And maybe a quick word on the structure, on how we envision the session. I asked the panelists to prepare a short introduction, a word of start to basically guide into the topic and also introduce the initiatives we're going to be speaking about. After that, we go in an open round of discussion, and thereafter I reserved some time for questions. So please, if you have questions, feel free to use the chat, use the Q&A. We will see to address them at the end of the session or towards the end of the session. And with that, I will give the word to Marta. Please, Marta, the floor is yours. Looking forward to your contribution.
Thank you, Hannes. Good morning, everyone from Panama. That's where the regional office for UNEP, the United Nations Environment Program, is based for Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm going to share my screen with some slides that I prepared for the session today. And what I would like to do, not being an expert on finance, but more, my work being more focused on adaptation to climate change from the technical point of view. But I wanted to give you an overview maybe of the transition that actually the work on adaptation is transitioning through, and where financial mechanisms as other implementation mechanisms are becoming more and more important in the conversation. We're moving fastly from the stage that we were at a few years back when we were talking about understanding the impacts of climate change, understanding vulnerabilities to climate change, working on the planning, on the very initial stages of planning, how to plan for adaptation to climate change. And now we're really, really fast moving into a very different conversation that is about the real implementation of adaptation and the real implementation of how to build resilience. And that goes inevitably through financial mechanisms. So maybe just to start with, and I won't stop here too much. I don't want to stop on this because we all know that. But the recent reports on from the IPCC, the results that we have seen from the recent negotiations and dialogues in COP26 do nothing but stress the severity of the impacts of climate change, especially on the most vulnerable regions of the world, and the impacts, the economic impacts, the social impacts, and the environmental impacts that climate change is foreseen to have, and that with new reports and with more and more research, they keep on stressing the importance and the urgency of acting on climate change. Not only for the poorest, actually, and for the most vulnerable part of the population is climate change a risk. But looking at the Latin American context, for example, if we look at countries as a whole, these economies are highly dependent on commodities, which are highly dependent on climate inputs. And this leads to not only those direct impacts over the population and over the poorest population or most vulnerable population, but also to the definition of the risk profiles of these countries that have an impact on the investment capacity and the capacity to attract investment from outside. So not only at the smaller scale, but at the larger scale, climate change is posing very severe financial risks for these countries. And in this context, and as reflected, I like this, referring to this report from the Global Commission on Adaptation that was released last year, where they say, or they mention how to work on, or for climate action and for building resilience, we really need kind of a three-tier revolution. We need a revolution in the understanding of risk and the understanding of complex systems, understanding the linkages between the causes, the root causes, and the impacts at the spatial scale and at the more complex system scale. We do need also a revolution in terms of enhanced planning at different levels and in different sectors, not only from the public sector, which is what has been traditionally worked up to now, the national adaptation plans, the sectoral adaptation plans for the public sector, but that needs to translate into other sectors as well, and into other levels of administrative levels, I mean at the country level. And of course, at the level of finance. It's very important also to make a revolution in terms of the financial mechanisms that we're using to increase resilience. Up to now, very focused on international funding and public funding, but more and more we see the need to increase the participation of private sector or to develop new financial mechanisms that can support this building of resilience. And why it's important to invest in adaptation or in building resilience? Not only because it produces economic benefits through risk reduction, through the increase in productivity, we're talking about agriculture, for example, but also because it provides innovation opportunities. It opens new markets, it opens new opportunities for investment, and it also delivers social and environmental benefits that should be considered, as we said before, in this analysis of systems and understanding of the complexity of systems that should be considered. However, and as we have seen in the recent, I have not used the data for the new gap adaptation report that is being released by UNEP this year, because it's still not released. But as we are seeing from these reports, and in parallel to the reports of the severities of the impacts of climate change, the more analysis and the more assessments that are being done in terms of the costs of adaptation, the more, the larger amount we see reflected that is necessary to invest now, and how difficult it is also to really decide where and how to invest on adaptation. But we see in some of these, or at least in this gap adaptation report, how most of the adaptation finance has been financed through public sector or through public funds because of the difficulties and the challenges of involving private sector in the financing of adaptation, and that the finance that has been dedicated to climate action from the private sector has been mostly dedicated to mitigation and not so much to the building of resilience. So in this context, and just to step into the session and talking specifically about microfinance, we from UNEP realize the importance, and at the level we usually work with most vulnerable population and focused also mainly on rural and agricultural areas, how microfinance is becoming, or is not a full solution, of course, but it's an instrument and a mechanism to upscale ecosystem-based adaptation that can play a very, very important role. And why is that? Because it has the potential for, to increase the access to finance for the most vulnerable population, as different to other financial mechanisms and other even credit mechanisms. Also because we see, at least from the Latin American region, that there is a very widespread and well-established network and market for microfinance. So the structure is there, and the structure reaches very small scale levels. So it's a vehicle that also allows for a much faster and more efficient channeling of funds to that level of intervention. And then not only in terms of funding, but the microfinance institutions at the, at the local level, they also provide or deliver very important services in terms of information, in terms of technical capacities to the end users and to the producers. And also because the microfinance mechanism has a capacity to really become a mechanism for immediate response. The resilience of this population, of this vulnerable population, is not only looking at 50 or 100 years from now, but is being decreased and is being damaged with every extreme event that happens, for example, in Central America, with the very frequent hurricanes or droughts. And that has a very deep impact into the levels of vulnerability of the population. So these microfinance mechanisms have a very interesting capacity to support this immediate response and recovery that decreases the adaptation. And we talk about adaptation deficit here. It's not only that we're talking about a lack of adaptation or a decreased adaptation in the future. There's now a deficit of adaptation capacity in these regions and these populations. And again, repeating on one of the aspects that I mentioned before, because they provide a very interesting opportunity for innovative investments and business models that didn't maybe exist up to now. There are, of course, challenges, and we will be talking about the challenges. We were discussing about them the other day in the preparation of this session. But of course, the issue of addressing public goods and the benefits. How do you allocate benefits to ensure that these mechanisms are well addressed? The alignment of objectives and indicators. When we're talking about ecosystem-based adaptation, it's very difficult to align the objective and the indicators, the impact indicators, when we're talking about micro interventions through microfinance, and when we're talking about ecosystem-based adaptation that usually has a much larger and landscape level vision, right? Also, there's a challenge and a limitation. Oh, sorry, heard something about the recording. I was saying that working on these type of initiatives and wanting to scale up or work with the private sector and the microfinance sector in particular needs also support in other aspects, maybe in policy and regulations, and also in terms of technical capacity of different actors, not only the microfinance institutions, but also the producers, the local and the national governments. And just to give a very, very brief example of, understanding these limitations and trying to focus on building those enabling conditions and working with the microfinance sector, we have worked mainly on two different initiatives that I just want to highlight today. The one is the microfinance for ecosystem-based adaptation. That's a project. It's a project that was funded by the German government with $5 million, but that allowed for the microfinance institutions that participated to understand or to incorporate that climate risk assessment into their operations through the different tools that were developed, guidelines, software, manuals, videos, not only for the microfinance institutions, but also for the producers and population around them through the establishment of demonstration farms and the systematization of ecosystem-based adaptation options. So to build kind of a taxonomy of what does ecosystem-based adaptation mean and how is that translated into your portfolio of investments. So through this project, and it was only grant-based project of these $5 million, as I said, but it created a very interesting opportunity, and it was kind of an opportunity to let us see how the interest from the microfinance institutions was really there, and there was a huge possibility of working with them and increasing the capacity to deliver funds with this objective. And the other initiative, and this is a much more complex initiative that was recently approved by the Green Climate Fund as one of the largest actually projects on adaptation in the world that's using a financial mechanism and that is not only grant-based. We focused on the concept of the microfinance for EBA, but wanted to scale it up, not only in terms of geographical scale, but also in terms of focusing not only on the microfinance institution and the financial aspects of the problem, but also dealing with those enabling conditions that we were mentioning before. So this is an initiative that, apart from the grant that is focusing on the technical assistance to the producers and the microfinance institutions, to the demonstration interventions, which are key actually to work with these actors at the local level, but there's also a grant facility that will be based on a competitive process to kind of bring up those new investment opportunities that we were talking about before and build this business ecosystem that needs to be built around the specific interventions of ecosystem-based adaptation. So just to give you an example, this microfinance might be directed to changing or modifying some techniques at the very micro level, at the farm level. But those changes, to be sustainable in time, they also need kind of a business ecosystem around them in terms of providers or distributors of technology and information and knowledge. Another component that we are incorporating in this new initiative, and in difference to MEBA, is a very also detailed work in terms of influencing the policy and regulation framework at the local level in terms of the planning instruments that communities and watersheds have, at the national level in the linking very well this initiative with the development of the national adaptation plans that are currently under development for most of the countries in the region and that are addressing adaptation at the national level and for different sectors. And also through the financial mechanism with a blended finance mechanism that is using funds in terms of, in the shape of credits from the GCF, combining them with credits from the Central American Bank of Investment, and delivering those credits down to the microfinance level distributed along the dry corridor. And on top of that, as an addition also to this financial mechanism, and after seeing how some of the challenges and some of the limitations for the most vulnerable population to access credits or microcredits, it was also dealing partly to the lack of the capacity of providing guarantees from these producers and this population. The initiative also includes a guarantee facility that's provided by the GCF that will be supporting these credit lines to the microfinance institutions. So there is my presentation. Just wanted to make a general picture of the need for investment on adaptation, the role that the private sector can play in building resilience, a very specific example through a few initiatives dealing with microfinance for adaptation. So thank you very much. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Marta. That was a very comprehensive picture, and once again, yeah, showed clearly how urgent the acting on or for adaptation actually is. I remembered because you were stating also the public funds and nicely highlighted the role of the microfinance sector, the inclusive finance sector. I think it was Ariel Benjimol from Jeff yesterday in the opening plenary who said, yeah, COP just ended. Not only bad news from COP, also something has achieved. Apparently, if all the promises taken or commitments taken turn into reality, we will see a shift from 95 mitigation to 5% adaptation in the public finance to 90 to 10%. Just to state again how urgently also action on the private side is needed to complement the picture that affects all of us. Thank you, Marta. As you said, we come back later in the discussion to it. And now I would like to move on to Luca, who is not only representing gawa Capital today, but also one of the initiatives we want to look at a bit more closer. Please, Luca, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hannes. Thank you very much for the invitation to join this very interesting panel. So I'm going to, as you mentioned, discuss two broad topics in the 10 minutes I have before the broader discussion. The first one is just to share with the audience a little bit the journey that in gawa Capital we have been taking towards climate resilience, financing climate resilience, and secondly, how this journey took us to initiate, together with YAPU, SIAT, and more members, the scale for resilience. So let me just as well, one second. Here we go. Here we go. Excellent. So gawa Capital is a fund management company. We started in 2009, and we have been investing primarily in financial institutions, in financial service providers. We have made so far around 40 investments worldwide, about 2/3 as debt investments, and the remaining third in equity investments, primarily, as I said, in microfinance institutions, as well as in financial service providers that provide services to small business. We have a pretty, as you can see in the map, we've had a pretty global kind of look. So we've been investing both in Latin America, in Asia, and a little bit in Africa. We're now in the process of expanding our activity there. We have been really in a journey, and I think that, I don't know if our final destination is climate resilience, but at least that's where we are going. We started, as I say, in 2009. We launched our first fund in 2010, and the second one in 2014. First one was 20 million. The second one was 32.3 million. And both of these funds had as an objective, the social objective, financial inclusion. And we actually, since we started, we really had a pretty strong social focus. So when we founded gawa, the social aspect was very much was really our priority. And at that point in time, what really vulnerable and low-income people needed was access to financial services, access to a loan, access to a bank account. During the these first few years, the microfinance and the financial inclusion sector evolved quite a bit, and that kind of goal has now, I would say, achieved. If you're a low-income person in most developing countries and you want a loan, you can get it. I mean, you do have the service providers that can provide you a loan. However, what during these first years in our activities, we realized that if you are, for example, a farmer living in a developing country, you can get a loan, but it won't be a loan which is targeted and built to really serve those needs. Because microfinance originally started more as providing working capital for a shopkeeper. So we realized that we had to set the bar higher, and we say, look, what we need to start solving for, and our objective should be not only to provide financial access to low-income people, but also providing that segment of people, in this case farmers, because farmers, let's remember, a lot of poverty, a lot of poor people are typically farmers and lives in rural areas. They need to finance assets. They need to finance, inputs, but they don't have really good products. So that's how we set up Uruma Fund, which is 120 million, which really had this very specific objectives of helping microfinance institutions to offer better financial services to farmers. During this journey, now Uruma, it is a reality. We deployed almost half of the 120 million. And during this journey, we realized that that's not enough again, because these farmers that now, increasingly they're getting access to good financial services, are facing even a bigger crisis, which is really adapting to climate change. So again, if the objective of Uruma is to provide, to push, to make financial service provider offering better credits, better services to farmers, the next step is to push the same financial service providers or other financial service providers in not only offering good products to farmers, but products that can really help farmers to be more resilient, to adapt to climate change. And that's the next project that we're working on, and that will hopefully be launched next year or the following year. In order to, this is something which is really important, and I wanted to highlight it. I think for the impact investing industry to be effective from a social standpoint, the design of any funds has to always start from the problem. You start from the problem, you build a theory of change on how to solve that problem, and then you build an investment strategy which is able to address that problem throughout that kind of theory of change. And that's what we did with Uruma. And here I'm not going through that in great details, but with Uruma, that's exactly what we did. We realized that farmers didn't have access to finance, that we had to work with financial service providers as agent of change. And so that's basically how we built our investment strategy. And it's important to mention as well that very often money is not enough. So we didn't only build an investment strategy and we raised a fund, we have also raised some technical assistance in order to complement the investments we make also with knowledge. So we can not only go to a microfinance institution and tell them, look, there is a market opportunity here. We'll make an investment of 4, 5, 6 million euros so that you can better serve farmers, but we also send you consultants that help you building that kind of business proposition. Now, talking about climate resilience, that has to be this same process. We're using it for climate resilience as well. And I think it's very important as an impact investing community that we take this approach. We always need to start from the problem, especially, and I think this will come up through the discussion, if a problem like adaptation is a very complex problem that does require a lot of different skills. And so it's key to take a theory of change approach. to really understand what the issues are and a bit breaking down the complexity. Throughout this journey, we have decided, as part of this journey, we have decided to join the Race to Resilience global campaign. And the Race to Resilience is a global campaign that aims at catalyzing and motivate initiatives around the world to work towards a more climate resilience world. And what the Race to Resilience wants to do is to make 4 billion people, vulnerable communities, more resilient by 2030. So within this framework, within this global campaign, together with YAPU and with CIAT, we did, and CGAAR, we decided to launch an initiative which is called Scale for Resilience, which aims to make smallholder farmers around the world more resilient by increasing the adaptation of nature-based solutions and by addressing financing as well as technical constraint. And I'll walk through the objective of this initiative in a moment, because the adaptation objective is full of complexity, and I think Marta walked us through some of those complexity earlier on. You could see I was quite impressed by the last slides of Marta on it's a pretty complex ecosystem. You have government, you have investors, you have financial institutions. So the only real way to solve the problems and to really try to address the problems and then hopefully solving them is really to take an ecosystem approach. So what we really like about Scale for Resilience, Scale for Resilience is basically trying to bring around the same table different stakeholders, microfinance institutions, which are the ones that will need, that do finance assets that to make farmers more resilient. It brings around investors that are the ones that have the capital and they can invest in the microfinance institutions. But it also brings around the table the facilitators, which in this case is CIAT and YAPU, because they're the ones that are really able to bring the knowledge, in case of YAPU, the data, which is necessary to really understand how this complex system works and basically untangling them. So I was mentioning the objective is that by 2030, we would like collectively as members make 3 million farmers more resilient to climate change with the participation of 100 microfinance institutions and disbursing at least $5 billion in credit. We do aim to do so by addressing the entire financial value chain and trying to address and trying to finance to ensure that microfinance institutions will be able to finance adaptation related assets such as drip irrigation, silvopastoral systems, etc. So this is a little bit the objective. And we do have a pretty articulated taxonomy to really track development and ensuring that we'll be able to address those issues. We very much invite, this is very much an open initiative. We very much invite microfinance institutions or other investors to join. We believe there is a lot of benefits that this initiative aims to bring to the table. Certainly, a lot of it is around learning. Where we are planning to. It's a pretty young initiative. I mean, we started in earlier this year, but we have a lot of I think very good tangible plans to create value for all the stakeholders that want to join us. First of all is exchange of knowledge, so learning from each other on the members, organizing webinars and sharing knowledge overall. We really want to mobilize funding as well. So hopefully the MFIs that will decide to join will really benefit through access to new and different pool of capital, and also visibility. Race to Resilience as a global campaign is gaining quite a bit of tractions, and Scale for Resilience, which is part of this global campaign, we believe is going to offer a lot of visibility opportunities for the members. So if you're interested in joining Scale for Resilience, feel free to contact with Gawa Capital, with me, or with Yapu, or with Siat, and we can provide you with more information. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luca. That was a great introduction to your work as Gawa, but also Scale for Resilience. I also posted the contact on the website in the chat. So we're looking for members, also the facilitators. It's not supposed to stay with Yapu and Siat, to say that quite frankly. So we're really open to everyone, and looking to create a real ecosystem until 2030. So we're looking at a long time frame, and we can provide a good framework for that. And time is running. Hence, I'm very quickly passing on the word to Anais, who is representing a investor with a very special approach, a very good one, as I personally think. I think I can add this clearly. And also another initiative in the sector. Please, Anais, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anas, and thank you to invite me to this very interesting discussion. I will just share my screen with you. All right. I guess it's working now. Yeah, so maybe a few words just before as a introduction, so you can get to know us a bit more. So Threetier is a private investor that were created in the 80s by a French NGO. We are providing either financing, so either debt or equity, and technical assistance to microfinance sector and also agricultural value chain. So to give you maybe a few data, we have at the end of October around 33 million euro portfolio, around 100 investors, and we are operating in 36 countries that are mainly located in Africa, but also in Latin America. And recently, during our last strategic plan, we decided to base our all new strategy on the social and ecological transition. So this means that we adapted our services offer to give the means that the transition is requiring. And we also adapted our new methodology and the identification tool to provide our services to investors that are sharing a common objective on this topic of the ecological transition. So how do we act for climate change and biodiversity preservation? First of all, I would say it's through directly our activity with our investors by providing them the right services. So we provide patient capital and also technical assistance. And I think it's definitely key to provide this blending offer, mixing patient capital and technical assistance. And I think I insist on the word patient because at CD, we have the chance to benefit from patient capital, so we can invest it patiently with other MFIs, so they can take the time to integrate this topic into their own institution. It's very key. Also, I think here technical assistance play a big role because it gives the opportunity to our investors to benefit from the expertise on such complex topic on climate change. So I put here 2 examples of project we were recently financing through our technical assistance facility. So there were one project in MFI in Burkina Faso where we financed a study on the agricultural practices of the clients of this MFI, which is really involved in the rural sector. And thanks to this study, it's revealed that around 2/3 of the clients were facing soil degradation. But this is just an example, but it really helped the microfinance institution to realize that if it wants to foster sustainable practices, it needs to put incentive. So after this study, they developed an incentive policy, which is basically offering a lower interest rate to its clients who are having agroecological practices. Just quickly, another example of technical assistance projects. We were working with one microfinance institution in Ecuador, and there we were financing an e-learning module on the causes and consequences of climate change, and how can this MFI can tackle through its own services offer this issue by offering green products. Another way at CD to act for climate resilience was obviously what we did internally at at CD. First of all, as it's such a complex, we talked about it earlier, but it's really complex topic and quite recent also. So we definitely needed to train the whole team at CD on several topics. So we benefited from trainings on climate finance, on sustainable agriculture, but there were also internal working groups that were created so we can spread, disseminate slowly the lessons learned on several topics within the team. Also, internally, and this took really a lot of time, and we were not expecting this to take so much time, but we adapted our own tool to understand where our partners stand regarding this topic. So one of the subgroup at CD that is working on agroecology developed a whole new tool on agroecological practices. It's more not so an evaluation tool, but really a tool that helps first the team to understand what is sustainable, what is not. And as we are not experts, it was quite difficult at the beginning. And the group benefited from the expertise of two members, new employees at CD that are agroeconomists, and definitely helped to have a comprehensive tool, but not too technical. So it's quite easy now to use it by all the team. So this tool is divided into 4 items. We are looking at water, energy resources. Secondly, we are looking more about the cropping practices within the organization, within the farms, if they are rotating crops. What are the irrigation system? What is the irrigation system? Thirdly, we are also looking at what they are putting as inputs into their farms. And lastly, we are looking more into detail about the socioeconomic viability. So here is about to look maybe more in detail about the access to land, for example, within the region. And also we developed another tool internally, which is basically a whole new monitoring system where we added a lot of new social and environmental indicators, which help us to follow year by year what are the progress that our investors are doing on the topic, who is maybe needed any technical assistance to progress on certain topics. And also it helps us to maybe identify who are the climate champion regarding this topic. And so we can maybe in the future organize with these champions some workshop within our own networks. And lastly, I hope I'm not taking too much time, Hannes, but we also developed a whole ecosystem approach to deal with this issue of climate change and biodiversity preservation, because as Lucas said, it's so much topic that are so above us. It's really so difficult to do it all by own. So we definitely believe that we need a common answer on this issue and a joint answer on this issue. So that's why we decided to act at 2 levels. So first of all, we try to develop a local supports to local networks. So as example, I put what we are doing currently with the main, which is the Microfinance African Institutions Network. And so with the main, we are currently developing a training module on ecological and social transition. And this definitely have a great outreach because the main has more than 100 members. So it's ongoing and it's developed in collaboration with the action group within e-MFP on climate smart finance. The second level we are working on is maybe more collaborate with our own peers, with other investors. So we are for sure member of the action group I just mentioned before. And lately, one subgroup of this action group were formed. So it's the latest initiative in the sector, and it unites several investors. The current member are BNP Paribas, EcoCredit, BBVA Foundation, Grameen Credit Agricole Foundation, and also CD. And we get also the expertise support of YAPU within this subgroup. And so this is a cross-sector collaboration with the global objective to address a green linkage between investors on one side and FSP on the other. And so we definitely, through this subgroup, want to encourage to foster the disbursement of financial and not financial support to FSPs so they can, on their side, help micro borrowers to be more resilient, to face more easily what climate change are causing within their activities. So it's a very new initiative too. And I think this is definitely a kind of initiatives that have great value because, as I said earlier, it's definitely a way to join forces all together so we can find answers that are adapted to the needs of FSPs, to the need of MFIs that are involved in the preservation of environments. Also, it's a good place to discuss between investors about the difficulties we are facing and the difficulties and challenges, but also the solution we all found. And I think it's also a good place where we can discuss and design all together maybe new financing tools. And I think one broader objective of this initiative will be at the end, for example, to create an incentive system for partners, for FSPs that are particularly committed to the environment protection. So maybe if I have time, I can just briefly introduce you to the very first achievement we did through this new initiative. So we designed a set of common metrics so we can have all the same languages about what we consider to be sustainable or not. And so we got inspired by some already existing framework, let's say. So we got inspired by the MEBA initiative that were presented earlier. We also were inspired by the Green Index 3.0, which just released, by the Euro taxonomy, by the SFDR regulation. And so we mixed it up and tried to pick up as investors what indicators are, which indicators are important to look more into. So these were our very first achievement. And now that we have decided and defined this list, the next step would be to test it and to see if we selected the right indicators, and also to implement maybe pilots with FSPs to test it.
Great. Anais, thank you very much. Very nice and very informative, and yeah, great to see also this in sector. It's not actually a cross sector; it's in sector collaboration between investors, and even greater to see that something tangible has already been produced, where people are aligned on. And it will be interesting to see how to put it into action. Given that we really are running out of time, I decided to switch a bit the next steps. I would still like to focus on the challenges. Actually, we said we're going to outline a bit the challenges, discuss about this, and also the opportunities and the successes. I still want to stick to that, but I would greatly appreciate if all panelists, if you could go with highlighting just the two most pressuring ones that you see. So Marta, you mentioned the transition risk as challenges you see. You mentioned the alignment between different stakeholders, and you mentioned incentives for financial institutions, if I understood it correctly, to actually adopt the policies. From your perspective, you have the UNEP, we're an international organization, and you also have a political sphere in it. When being involved with these projects, where do you see clearly the biggest challenges for the mainstreaming of inclusive finance for climate change adaptation? Marta, you're on mute, unfortunately.
Sorry. Thank you for the question. I think throughout the three presentations, we have actually seen these main challenges that I'm going to mention reflected, which is and I mentioned it in the presentation, which is sometimes the difference in language and understanding. And as Luca was saying, what is the understanding of the problem that you need to really understand so that you can build that theory of change and understand what the objective is. That when you're talking about adaptation to climate change, or you're talking about vulnerability, it seems like a very broad spectrum of a problem, that it's a complex problem. And when you're talking about maybe the microfinance mechanism or the microfinance, that's a very specific solution, but it's not a complete solution to the problem. It's a partial solution that has a very, very important role to play, but that needs to be embedded into a wider solution that, as the other speakers were mentioning as well, needs other aspects to be built on that don't only depend on the financial institutions or the financial mechanisms.
You are on mute, Hannes.
Now I start doing it. I'm sorry. Luca, what would you say from the perspective of Scale for Resilience? What is the biggest challenge in actually mainstreaming climate change?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the great opportunity we have, and then I move to the challenge, the great opportunity we have is that there is an increase, and this has been highlighted throughout the presentation, there's an increased focus on adaptation, right? I think there is and there will be more money flowing into the space. But if we do want to solve this issue, and I'm sorry I'm repeating, but I think that's the core of the matter, is we need to untangle that kind of complexity by bringing around the table different actors that bring different things, right? I'm just rephrasing a little bit what Marta said, but I think that's really is the issue. But maybe from a financial standpoint, what I might want to add is that if we really want to, scale up as we need to mobilize a lot of private capital. And if we want to mobilize private capital, it's key to simplify things. I mean, capital markets typically invest based on, they need to understand what they're investing in. As a result, to understand it, they don't have that much time to dive into all the technical details. So you have to make it easier for them to digest. And so having a ecosystem approach where you have different people sitting around the table trying to untangle the issue to what really matters, I think it's key, but it can be a challenge because it's difficult sometimes, Marta was mentioning, is the language, right? Bringing around the table people which have very different backgrounds and very different skills, sometimes it's challenging. So I think that is the opportunity and the challenge as well. I think another opportunity and challenge as well is the rise of blended finance that over the last few years has been developing. In our case, the Uruma Fund is a good example of successful blended finance vehicle. We got support from first loss from the European Commission. We got some subsidized leverage from the Spanish government. So that really helped. And I think that's going to be another, it's challenging to bring in different kind of actors, catalytic capital, but then if we manage to do so, we can really achieve that kind of scale up that is needed.
Wonderful. Thank you, Luca. Anais, what do you consider the biggest challenge, seen from the perspective now of the initiative of the investors?
Yeah. Well, there were several challenges through this very new initiative, but the very first one is to find the time to all reunite and organize all the working sessions to define the list of indicators. But we found the right time, but definitely as we were a group of 5 investors, it was quite challenges to organize it. And I guess also there were a lot of interesting discussion within this group to compare what were the expectations through this list of indicators and more broadly with this initiative. And we had quite now a good news, a good opportunity, I guess, to yes, maybe solve this problem of mixing expectation, because we one of the member of the coalition of the initiative had the really good news to beneficiate from a DEF challenges. So it will be a very good opportunity for this subgroup to work on it, because it will give us the opportunity to transform our list into an operational tool and to do it with 5 FSPs that will be pilot tests. So this will be definitely something concrete on which we can work on it.
Absolutely. And I think that has also been elaborated yesterday in the opening plenary by Fondation Grameen Crédit Agricole. I think we can state that quite clearly. It's great because what has already been achieved in this working group, unofficial working group of investors, has the chance to be taken to the next level, so that actually, the full sector can really benefit of it, and you've got tested methodologies in place. So that is great. We have 1 minute left, I see, and there are a couple of questions. Honestly, Anais, I see 3 I directed to you in the Q&A. Maybe you can have a look whether you can answer them. I see.
With how many MFI are we working in Western Africa?
In Africa, maybe also on that one. Yeah, maybe. You can write something that would be
I will write down.
I can at least also add that Scale for Resilience also will be going to Africa on December 9. We will have the launch event there, and that could also be a very nice opportunity to join the initiative in case Africa is the continent of focus. And apart from that, I see. Did you support ecosystemic service projects? Marta, may I throw this at you? Do you need a clarification here?
No, and I'm guessing Bertrand is referring to the issue we were discussing the other day, and how, for the support of different types of interventions and scale of interventions. I'm talking about this difference of scale between the micro interventions and ecosystem service.
The landscape level too,
yes, we are, but again, this is something that requires different instruments. Maybe when you're looking at the perspective of ecosystem services, that's something that's difficult to finance or to support through microfinance mechanisms. And it's something that in the case of the dry corridor, for example, that's an area that we're supporting from the granting mechanism. That doesn't mean that there are other financial mechanisms that could be developed, not the microfinance, but maybe other financial mechanisms that could be developed for this. But in the case of that initiative, that is being financed, but through the grant component in collaboration with the local governments.
Great. Yeah, and that is also part which makes the whole dry corridor project a bit more complex than its predecessor, the MEBA project. With that, we're coming to an end because we're 1 minute over time. I would nevertheless ask you all for your final statement before we close the session. And I'm sure you can, yeah, maybe to the audience, feel free to reach out to us. Everyone is on LinkedIn. You see Anne's email here. Please feel free to reach out if there are other questions. We're happy to answer them. And sorry that there's only limited amount of time for this session. But with that, Marta, do you want to start?
Yeah, just to say on a positive note, because we have talked about the challenges a lot, but I think, you know, sessions like this and weeks like this and how things are moving at the moment is very encouraging as well. And, you know, with initiatives like the ones presented today, we have a big opportunity for, you know, building knowledge and building evidence in the coming years. So I'm very positive. This will lead to a good place.
Wonderful. Luca, would you like to go next?
Yes, we need you. Join whoever is interested. Please join us in Scale to Resilient. Contact either Hannes or Siat or myself to get more information. I think we do need many different perspectives to solve this complex issue, and I think there are the reward both in terms of impact, but also in terms of well deployed capital can be really big. I personally think that that adaptation it is one of the next big frontiers in impact investing. So I think we need all to focus on this, and Scale for Resilient could be a good initiative to bring together a different perspective.
Thank you, Luca. With that, Anais, I pass the word to you.
Nothing really more to add, just to keep posted on this all new project with the GEF and what we are doing within this subgroup in the Climate Smart Finance Action Group. I think things are going very well, and we will keep you posted about all the new activities of the group, and feel free to also manifest if you're interested to join in.
Wonderful. Then I will just echo all of that and say all of the initiatives that were portrayed today, they are open. The subgroup, the initiative of investors is also becoming a subgroup, or planning to become a subgroup of the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group. So that will be another manifestation of the initiative. There you're very welcome to join. Maybe at some point it will also become part of Scale for Resilience and have a framework until 2030. And with this I stop. Thank you for the very positive ending. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to it in the discussion, but thank you very much, Marta, Luca, Anais, for sharing your insights. And thank you, audience, everyone, for listening in. See you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.